Okay, welcome listeners. Here we are coming at you from the White Horse Studios in Gold Coast once again for From Navy Ships to Property Tips podcast. I'm here with one of our preferred referral partners, Shaun Carney of 44 Home Property Management. Welcome, mate.
Thanks for having me.
Last week we had one of our builder partners in here telling our guys what makes a good investment property and what to look for when investing in property. But I thought it would be a really good idea to get some ideas out of your head into my listeners' ears about what comes after you've purchased the property and the management, getting in a tenant, getting the rental yield, getting all those sort of things in order. So again, welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Cool. Let's get into it.
We met Shaun, I think, a few years ago now through the Tweed Heads.
The Gullies.
The rugby league side. We were sponsoring the team and we did a prezzo down there, and you're in the audience and you grabbed us at the end and said we need to have a catch up. Tell us a bit about your background and how you ended up at Tweed Heads.
Yeah, so I grew up in Port Macquarie and got a contract to come up to the Gold Coast and play for the Titans.
Okay.
Spent a couple of years there. Ended up in the first grade squad.
Yeah.
And then pre-season rolled around and did a slip disc flipping a tractor tyre.
What?
So that put me out for a little bit.
Oh, no.
Didn't get back into the top squad after that one, but ended up playing 100 Queensland Cup games for the Seagulls.
Unreal.
And that was one of my last years there when I met you.
Yeah, sure. Okay, and so life after football.
Life after footy.
You've ended, and it's a transition, isn't it? I mean, a lot of our listeners would know, I guess, being in the bubble, which is being a professional sports person, and then being in the military, it's kind of a similar thing. You're in a bubble, you're a specialist, you only know your job, which is either playing footy or being in the military. And then life after that, the transition can be tough.
It definitely can. I think one of the things that was good for me was during that time, I was studying Bachelor of Journalism, which I was doing at Griffith Uni here on the coast.
Right.
So I sort of always had my foot, outside just in case. It doesn't always make it easier. I mean, it helps, but there's always that, that moment once footy stops and you kind of go, what now?
Yeah.
And you've got so much free time too once you've stopped. There's no
that's
training
right.
and no travelling. So
I've got a similar story. When I decided to transition out of the military, it took me 3 years to do it, and that was courses in finance, financial planning and property as well. So it's daunting.
Especially when you spent a long time out of the game, and by game I mean education. If you sort of finish year 12 or whatever, and then you spent 5-6 years doing whatever.
Studying as a mature age student, it's hard to get your head back in the books, isn't it?
It is.
So, all right, and so you landed in property. So tell us how you made the decision and why. Where's your passion and why did you find property?
I've always had a passion for property. I've always seen it as one of the best vehicles. I've always enjoyed reading books from when I was a kid, and I always found property from all the experts always talk about. It's such a great vehicle for building wealth.
Sure.
So I always had a passion for it. Then when I was at uni, obviously I had to put myself through uni, so I was working for a local real estate firm. And once I'd finished up my degree, I sort of transitioned from there and went into a property investing company.
Okay.
As their marketing director for 2 or 3 years.
Right. Do you want a job?
Come back.
Yeah, come back.
Yeah,
come on. No, joking.
Then after that, my business partner actually I met her when I was working there at my first gig.
Unreal.
So
you moved from that role into management. You started your own firm, 44 Home Property Management.
That's correct.
Here on the coast. Tell us a little bit about how you guys got off the ground and why you chose management.
Yeah, so Lisa, she's unreal. She's been working in the industry for a lot longer than I have. And when I'd finished, I was sort of getting over that gig as the marketing coordinator for that property investment company, and I sort of reached out to her and said, what do you think about starting our own gig? And she was sort of finishing up there at that agency, and we just decided to venture out on our own because we just felt that, what investors were being charged, management fee wise, they weren't getting back in service.
Sure.
And I felt like the property management model was still so archaic.
Yeah, sure.
that we could just do a better job and bring a fresh and modern approach to it with the way that it can be done. And that's what we decided to do. And Lisa, having a lot of contacts, she was the BDM, so she started to generate a lot of interest. And yeah, that's kind of how we started. And we came to get 44 home purely because...
Go on. This is an interesting story.
Yeah,
for you guys, there's a backstory here. I've always wondered, 44 Home Property Management, where did 44 Home come from? And I wasn't sure if it was a lucky Chinese number thing or...
Well, I think it actually is.
Oh, is it?
I don't know. Maybe we need to Google that.
Yeah.
No, 44 Home. So I wanted a number in the name.
Yep.
And she wanted something that represented, I don't know, a feeling of home and nurturing, and that's kind of how we come to the two. But I was driving the car with my wife one day and she goes, "Why don't you call it 44 Home?" And I was like, oh yeah. 44 Home was a game that we used to play when we were kids, and you had like the letterbox or the light pole. And you had to count to 44 and you go and hide, and you had to get back to the pole before you got tagged. Anyway, it turns out that a lot of the people that we do business with, you know, in their 20s or 30s or whatever, they remember playing that game. So it's an easy, brand for them.
Well, I'm a bit older than you. Back in my day, we used to play Bull Rush.
Yeah.
Remember that one?
Yeah.
You would have been good at it. Quick on the edges there.
That's it.
So your business is based here on the Gold Coast?
It is, yeah. So we're in Coolangatta on the Gold Coast, but we've got properties down to Pottsville, all the way up to, I guess, Streamworld, Coomera.
Yep, great. Good one. So obviously we've chosen you guys. We've had a fantastic relationship. You've managed all of our clients very, very well. And it's very important for us, going through the process of helping someone invest in property. A lot of the hard work gets done by our team, the consultations, the moving through property selection, engaging the guys with a mortgage broker, and it can all be a really great experience. But the lasting impression and the most important part, I believe, or one of the very important parts for my investors, is getting a good manager in there to manage and actually get the rental yield and get the good tenants and get all those sort of things. It's the lasting impression. I can do as great a job as possible, but if I put the guys onto a manager that doesn't do the right job for me, that's the lasting impression. And this is the property that they're now still engaged with, and if they've got the rental yield not coming in the tenants. So it's a very, very important part of the process.
Yep.
So I guess I'd say, what are you? You said that you do a better job and you thought that the industry was becoming archaic. So tell us a few of your points of difference and what are the pros and cons of either managing the property yourself and what you guys would do as manage a property for our clients.
Yeah, so there's obviously several factors to that one. One of the biggest ones is being technology. We all know that technology has been such a major disruptor into a lot of industries,
sure.
Especially real estate. So one of the things that we've been able to do is incorporate technology into the way that we operate.
Okay.
I know that there's a lot of agencies that still do routine inspections with a piece of paper, and they go in there and then they have to go back to the office and then they have to type it up. They don't take photos. So there's a lot of agencies that are still stuck, I guess, in the early 2000s, late 90s, whereas we've got our iPhones. We walk into a property, we can record it, we can take photos, we can type on it and then sync it and it goes straight back to the office.
Yep.
And it automatically sends a report to the owners.
Great.
So there's a lot of different factors there that we've been able to do that gives the investor a better experience. And what was the second question?
It's sort of the points of difference, I guess. One of the things that I've always, across my portfolio, at the start, I had some pretty average managers looking after a couple of my properties, and I'd never hear from them unless there was a problem. Like it's, something's broken, something needs doing. I think a lot of people aren't contacted enough by their property managers, and I know that you guys have a routine where you do touch base just to give updates and rental yield sort of analysis and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, we do. We I think we make it a point to build a relationship. I think one of the things that we should touch on is that when we start out our relationship with either the tenant or the investor, education is such a big factor in that because it's one of the main reasons we can I guess, alleviate stress of the owner, because we want to know, are you an owner that wants to be touch base with once a month?
Okay.
Or are you a low maintenance owner that just pay me rent and, you know, only contact me if there's an issue?
Okay.
So
good.
if we know what they want, then we can give them that.
Okay.
If we don't know that at the start, that's where miscommunication can come into play, and they don't feel like they've been looked after as well. The same goes for the tenant, in terms of educating them about paying their rent. You know, a lot of tenants pay their 2 weeks up front when they start, and then they just think that they're 2 weeks in front.
Yeah.
But they don't realise that they haven't paid rent for 2 weeks, and then when they actually pay, they're 2 days in arrears. So
yeah, right.
there's a lot of things that can happen, and education's one of the biggest things that we rely on.
Absolutely. Just like us at Robson Robson Property, it's all about education and getting you guys across what it is that you're doing. So that's really good. And that'd work too for guys. You know, a lot of our clients are down in Sydney, Melbourne, Perth, from all around the country, and they're purchasing up here in southeast Queensland, on the Gold Coast, Brisbane, Sunshine Coast. And so they really are relying on the communication from the manager. Like, they can't jump on a plane every couple of months or whatever to come and check on their property. So I think that's a really key point. Don't be afraid of getting into the market, interstate, rent-vest outside your locality. A lot of people say all the time, I want to buy something in my city, so I can just drive past it and check on it every now and then.
That's what I mean by a high maintenance owner and low maintenance owner.
Yeah.
You got people that want to drive past and make sure that the lawns are mowed.
Yeah.
And then you got others that just pay me
Leave it
and contact
up
me
to
once
you.
every 6 months. So
Yeah, good. So there's a couple of points here that I want to go across. So how do you go about finding a tenant? We'll start with that. How do you go about finding a tenant? If I'm got one of my young guys who's just invested in a property, we're 4 weeks out from a settlement, I contact you, go.
Yeah, so I think that's one of the best things about working with you guys at Robson and Robson is obviously, one, the education, but two, it's the planning, because you give us as the property managers a lot of notice, 3 to 4 weeks notice, so we can start advertising the property 3 weeks out.
Sure.
Put that on realestate.com and Domain and all the online portals. We've also got, because we're a property management only company, we've got a tenancy database, people that have missed out on properties in the area.
Yeah, right, okay.
People that just contact us through social media, because we've got a good social media presence. And so what we do is we start advertising early, 2 or 3 weeks before settlement. We get the inquiry in. If we can get access to the property prior to settlement, that's always a good thing, and we've been able to do that on several occasions with you guys.
Yep.
And then generally what we can do is we can, we process applications, we turn them around in a day, sometimes 2, depending on if we can get onto the owner. And then most times the investors are really only a day or 2 out of a tenant moving in once settlement comes into play. Yeah.
That's and the timing is so key. I think a lot of people talk about, what if I don't get a tenant? Well, what's the vacancy rate? And part of the strategy that we employ, like we just said, is heaps of notice, and it's not just when you first get your first tenant either. So if you've signed a 6 or a 12-month lease with your tenant, we'll engage with that tenant 6 weeks previous to the lease coming up.
Yeah, so our agency is 3 months. So
3 months.
So if we
Unreal.
do, whether it's a 6 month, we only do 6 and 12s. We don't tend to worry about 3 months, because it's just too much of a cost, and you sort of start to lose money there. So we do 6 and 12s. So yeah, let's just say we do a 6 month lease, we're contacting them in
3 months.
Halfway through the lease, we're sending them an email saying, are you going to renew? We're also talking to the owners and saying, are we going to increase the rent, or are you happy with how it is?
Great point. I was going to bring that up next.
Yeah, because we can only do it once a year. There's new legislation that's come into play, which means we can only increase the rent once a year.
Yep.
But that's where we sort of that's a conversation that we have with the owners is, are you happy with your tenant? Just leave it as it is, or do you want to lift it because you want some more money? That's where we come in, and that's one of the big things as a property manager. We can negotiate between the tenant and the owner.
So what sort of market indications do you look for to decide whether you can put the rent up?
Supply. That's one of the big things, is obviously how many properties are on the market for rent at the moment.
Yep.
How long are they sitting on the market? Have these properties, let's just use $500, which is generally pretty average weekly rent. if it's at 500, has it been sitting on the market for 3 weeks, 4 weeks? Why? Why is it doing that?
Sure.
There could be several factors to that. The owner's particular, doesn't like pets, all those types of things.
Okay.
Or have we seen an increase? Is it now the average is at 520 in that
Yeah,
particular
sure.
suburb? So there's quite a few things that we look at. Not just one thing, or just saying let's just lift it because we can.
Great. I think some of the you mentioned supply and demand. That's something that we do at Robson Robson Property as well. We sort of look for areas where there's a greater concentration of owners rather than just investors with their tenants in there. I guess supply and demand. If there's less properties that are in the rental pool at any one given time, I mean that means that there's greater chance for that undersupply of properties on the market will give you a greater rental yield. So.
Well, if we're still talking about making sure that we find tenants and how we find tenants and making sure that the investor doesn't have a property sitting there vacant, one of the best things I think what you guys do, and one of the key things about investing, is knowing your demographic in that area. Do they want a double lock-up garage, or do they only have one car? Are you building near 2 high schools or 2 primary schools? Because if they're high schools and they're teenagers, do they have 2 living areas because they want their privacy? There's all these types of things that you got to take into consideration. And you guys have been able to pick the best spots, which means you're building supply to what the demographic needs. Yep. And that's why we're able to put tenants in there easy and quickly, because it's what they want. Yeah,
we do try and do that. I think what I'd say to that is we do actually do the research on knowing what our demographic is, who we're purchasing this property. We've got a picture in our mind. We're going to purchase or we're going to invest in this sort of property because we know that there's this sort of demographic of people that are going to be moving, and this is the desirable type of property.
Yeah, well, you got it. I mean, that's you'd be mad if you were building a unit in an area where people wanted to have a backyard.
Exactly right. Very good. Where are we up to? So the process of actually engaging, if I'm an owner and I want to get yourself or any property manager engaged on my property, there's some paperwork. It's pretty simple. What's the process there of engaging a property manager?
Yeah, so we ask some pretty basic questions. If there's a pool, let's just use a standard house, free standalone house. If it has a pool, we need a pool safety certificate. Okay. So are you organising that? Are we organising that? Are your smoke alarms compliant? Have you done that, or are we doing that?
Yep.
Are you going to pay your Gold Coast City Council rates, your water rates, or you want us to pay that on your behalf? Bank account details. So there's probably 6 to 8 questions that we ask.
Sure.
Once we get those questions back, we put that into a management agreement. We send that electronically so you can sign it on your iPhone.
Sure.
And then we're in play.
So it's just one form to engage.
One form.
A property manager, nice and easy.
Yep.
That's good. I guess a lot of those things, those questions would be easily ticked off buying into a new property. I mean, everything that's built new has to be compliant with the covenants.
Correct.
In council and whatnot anyway. So
yeah,
new properties are the way to go. One of those points I guess I want to bring up, we're going to do some worst case scenario things now just to rest you guys at home at ease. I obviously deal with objections all the time. That's part of what any sort of property mentor will do. People come up with, this is what I've heard, worst case scenario, what if I don't get a tenant, what if they don't pay the rent? So we've touched on, vacancy rates. You're choosing a property in an area where there's a supply, and we do all the due diligence and make sure that there's the right sort of demographic in the area. What is the process, just say, if we have a tenant in the property that stops paying rent? Dun, dun, dun.
Well, safe to say that doesn't happen at our agency.
Yeah, bang, good
so
one.
I'll start with that one. But I think, so for instance, with us, we have automatic arrears in our property software. So that goes out the day after. If you haven't paid and you're 1 day behind, your automatic arrears start along with text message and email.
Okay, good.
And then after, if it hasn't been paid within 4 days, so within that week, it sends a notification to us.
Good.
So we then pick up the phone and we start contacting them and going, what's going on? It could just be that they forgot, or they haven't been paid, or they're sick, or whatever.
Yep.
We put all those things in play. I mean, worst case scenario, if they don't pay rent, and they're just not looking like they're going to pay rent, then we have to start giving them notices, and the worst case scenario is that we have to go to tribunal and get custody of the house.
Yep.
But that's why we put such a strong emphasis on having landlord insurance.
Yeah, sure.
Because if most of the time, especially with the new properties that you're buying, it's a good quality tenant. I mean, like what we call an A grade tenant. So the people that we're putting in there are, your professional couples and things like that. So it's pretty rare.
Yeah.
I would say it's very, very rare.
That's what I want to hear.
That you ever have to face that.
Sure.
We haven't had that in
Good.
our agency.
Tick.
So it's be safe knowing that when you're buying a good quality property, you're getting good quality tenants. But worst case scenario, you have to go to tribunal, talk to the judge, get custody of the house. We do all of that. We represent the owner.
Yep.
If that does happen, that's why we've got landlord insurance in place. We put the claim in on behalf of the owner. We get your money back. If there's any damage done to the property, we get the money back for that.
Sure. Let's talk about landlord insurance. What is that?
Landlord insurance is basically, I guess, you think about when you get home and contents insurance. Home insurance, protects the house if it burns down.
Sure.
And contents is obviously the lounges and TVs.
Sure.
Landlord insurance is what protects you when your tenant stops paying rent.
Okay.
If your tenant does damage to the house.
Sure.
And if they've got a dog and the dog just tears up the carpet.
No pets.
No.
No pets.
Yeah. So that's essentially what landlord insurance is.
Okay.
And that's obviously fully tax deductible,
Great.
which you can claim.
Yep.
But we can set that up for the investors, and
Sure.
it's something that we strongly recommend.
Sure.
There's two ways you can go about it. You can go with Terry Shear, which is like a landlord insurance provider, and they cover you for everything. And I'm not a landlord. I'm not a Terry Shear spokesperson by any means, but we use them because we know that our landlords are going to be covered. Then you've got some landlords that say, I'll just wrap it under my home and contents with one of the bigger players in that industry. But there's a lot of there's
insurance companies that don't want to pay.
That's exactly right.
I'll say it for you. I can see you struggling on that. How do I say this?
Yeah.
I'll say it.
They will do whatever they can to get out of it because it's not what they do. They don't do landlord insurance.
Sure.
They offer it because they can make money off it, but
Sure.
it doesn't mean that they're gonna pay. So that's part of the management agreement questions. We can set it up for you if you want to wrap it in your home and contents and pay. Just we can't guarantee it.
It's another good reason why, you've just outlined a lot of great points that a lot of guys wouldn't know, and it just outlines again why you use a manager and not just do it yourself.
Yeah, well, we were talking about this before off air. It's you have that conversation with people where they say, I want to self-manage. Why would I pay a property manager? Blah blah blah. What a lot of investors, a lot of landlords don't understand is that if they're going to manage the property themselves and then they go to make that claim for insurance for loss of rent or for damage, a lot of insurance providers won't pay them out because
you're not a professional entity.
Not a professional.
Yeah, that's right.
So that's why you have to engage a property manager because otherwise it's going to be null and void.
Yeah, because the property hasn't been managed correctly, i.e. you got a bad tenant, i.e. they're not going to...
Correct.
Yeah, so there you go. All right. Sounds like a lot of work. I'm glad you're doing it for us. All right, so what I want to talk about next with you, Shaun. Everyone out there knows I'm heavy on Southeast Queensland at the moment. On a macro level, we're seeing nowhere in the country where there's infrastructure, population growth and capital growth potential, coupled as well with a 5% plus rental yield. We can talk about the rest of the country and then I want to talk about a couple of our specific clients that we've helped out lately.
Yeah, so we've got some figures here, national-wise in terms of yield. That's sitting at 4.5%. Then we've got our Sydney market, which is at 3.2, which is quite low for your yields.
So they've had really good capital growth, as everyone knows from around 2008, 2009 after the GFC. Sydney and Melbourne have gone through the roof, and you've got capital growth there. But what we're not seeing is the rental yield. And from a cash flow perspective, the rental yield is so important.
Yeah, well, you've got houses in Sydney at 2.7%.
That's low.
Yeah, that's very low.
Yeah, so
you come up to Queensland or the Gold Coast in particular, and we're averaging about 5.6.
That's right.
Yeah,
unreal.
So For the clients that you've referred to us for a particular project here on the coast, one obviously is a professional football player.
Yep. Can't mention any names.
No names, no teams. And then we've got a Navy guy as well. For the pro footballer, this was I think it was a four-bedroom townhouse with a study. So it was in a good area. It was a good quality build. He bought that for $589,000, and we got tenants in there within 2 days of settlement for $630 a week. So that's 5.6%.
That's beating everyone, isn't it? It's even beating the Gold Coast average.
Yeah, that's right.
Yep.
Good quality tenants as well. So we basically touch base with him every now and then, just saying everything's going all good. We don't.
Yeah, he's happy.
Hey mate, how you doing?
I think they're both doctors, aren't they? The two tenants in that one.
Yeah.
Both professionals working at Griffith Uni and the Bond Hospital. How's our Navy guy gone?
Navy guy, he's just purchased a 3-bedroom, 2-story apartment. So it's an apartment, but it's a 2-story. He bought that one for $599,000. We've just listed that one for $650 a week. Sure, giving us a 5.6% yield as well. Heaps of inquiry. That'll go pretty quick.
I think we actually managed to get him as well. A 12-month guarantee on 6%, so he's actually going to get $690 a week for the first 12 months, and then it'll revert back to $650.
That's correct. So we even though we put all the plans in place to make sure that we get tenants in there as quick as possible, you've done a good job getting him a rent guarantee. So,
do you see any other guys in the market out there doing this for their clients?
No, I don't.
Yeah.
No, I don't.
Good answer. I mean, that's part of the deal here at Robson Robson. We're actually working on behalf of the buyer. We don't work for the vendor like traditional agents do. We're all in it for the buyer and getting guys in contact with you to get these great results.
Well, we've spoken about this before, and I think it's something that's important to touch on, is that you do such a good job at Robson Robson with your education, your selection of properties and your broker and your referral network and all of those types of things. That's why it's important for us as the property managers at the back end to pick it up and make sure it's a smooth and seamless transition the entire way through, because we don't want to drop the ball on you guys right at the end.
And honestly, and this is giving you a bit of a rap, we're pissing in each other's pockets a bit here, but we've gone through 4 or 5 or 6 managers where the guys just haven't been up to scratch. They haven't contacted our guys. They haven't got the rental yield. They haven't done the work. We've covered everything I wanted to talk about now. Tell us a funny story. You had any hiccups along the way? Where have you learnt your lessons? I've always learnt my lessons the hard way. Yeah. Obviously, starting a new company, and when you did start the company, you would have had some ups and downs. Anything funny happen?
Oh, I think when you're starting out, and you're trying to get your name into the world and make sure everyone knows who you are, you're sort of going out there and talking to everyone and doing what you can. And we met this particular client who had a property at a local agency, and it was already in tribunal. Yeah, right. But the agency just wasn't rocking up. So there was no one.
They cut it away.
They just cut their losses when they turned up to this property, to this courthouse. So she contacted us. So we were on the back foot straight away. Sure. And basically, the only reason that they were in tribunal was because the tenant was requesting maintenance, like just have a swinging door on the bathroom. Like, they didn't even have a door on the bathroom for privacy. There was just really basic maintenance stuff that the property managers weren't relaying onto the owners, and they just weren't actioning it, and they just weren't doing it. So the tenants just went, I've had enough, and just stopped paying rent.
I'm not paying rent.
I'm not doing anything.
Sure.
And so we took it over, and we ended up just not even having to go to court. I just went around to the house and just sat down with the tenant and just said, tell me what's going on. Like, why are you so mad? And they just, spoke for nearly 2 hours about all the issues that we had, and we wrote it down, and we just went from, most important down to least important, and we got the things fixed, and the owner wasn't even aware of most of it. So sure, it's not really the ones that we like to get, but when you do get them, I think it's just property management's just about communication, and making sure that you're relaying the messages that need to be relayed, and you're actioning the things that need to be actioning, especially with maintenance. So we were lucky enough to retain that management, and the tenant ended up being one of our best tenants. Oh, there you go, because you did a good job. That's right. I guess you filled the gap. The other agency wasn't doing their job. No. Very good, mate. One thing that I do want to say, regardless of whether any of you guys out there have properties with us at Robson Robson Property, I can't talk
I can't say enough good things about Shaun and his team. So if you've got a property here in southeast Queensland and you're not getting the services from your manager, or you think you can get more rent, or you think you just need to have a look at doing something different, a fresh set of eyes to look over your portfolio, I'm going to have Shaun's details in the links here on the podcast. So I can't give you enough of a wrap. Get in contact with Shaun, and you might be able to get some better results out of your property.
Appreciate that, mate.
That's all right. So when we're looking to bring properties into our portfolio, Shaun, I'm always looking at that, especially for my first-time investors, or my young guys, $400,000 to maybe $550,000 in purchase price. That's where I look, and that's where I'm usually seeing the best returns. What are your thoughts on what price points and what rental yields are you thinking is best for a first-time investor?
Well, that's kind of the sweet spot, right? When you're looking at being able to find tenants, there's a lot of tenants that sit from our experience in our agency here, particularly on the Gold Coast, is when you're looking at that 450,000 to 550,000, you're kind of expecting the same in rent, $450 to $550 a week rent.
Sure.
And that's where we find there's a lot of people looking. That's kind of your pool, your massive pool.
Sure.
When you
it's like a bell curve, isn't it?
It is.
That's where the main volume of
it really is.
tenants are sitting.
I mean, I guess for you, it'd be rare for you to start trying to look for properties around the 800,000 to 900,000. I know that for us, if we've got properties, and we do have premier properties, waterfront properties and stuff like that.
Sure.
And if they're sitting around the $800 to $900 a week, we find tenants, but it can sit on the market a little bit longer because you're looking for a particular type of person that can afford that. There's just not as many of them. You can get them,
sure,
but you got to be prepared that your property can sit vacant for 3-4 weeks.
That's right. Well, that's exactly right. I've got a client coming up in a couple of weeks from Sydney, and they're dead set on a $700,000 to $800,000 townhouse in Brisbane, and they can afford it. But I'm sort of saying to them, look, you need to be in that 500-ish bracket there to get the right tenant. Save some of that deposit for your next property, I think. Well, that's another good thing as well. Spread your risk.
I think the best way to explain it is if you've got someone that can pay $800 to $900 a week, they can afford a mortgage, right? And so you tend to have them turn over quite a lot. They come and do 12 months, and they've saved their deposit, or they've got enough equity or whatever, and they go and buy their own house. And then your property's vacant again.
Good point.
When you get people in the 400 to 600 bracket, they're your 3-5 year tenants. They're the ones that sit there and they just clock over.
Yep.
Yeah.
Good point. Another great point around about that sort of price bracket is if you get up in the $1 million homes or the $900,000 homes, in 10 years' time, the maintenance on those properties would be great as well.
Yeah. I mean, even if you're looking at the million, you might as well be in Sydney.
Yeah.
That's when you got to determine obviously what your investing strategy is, if it's capital growth or yield. But if we're talking about being able to get a property that's going to have a tenant in there and be low maintenance for you, in terms of not having to find tenants all the time and not having to worry about it being vacant and not having to pay a lot of money for fixing stoves and things like that, stay in the sweet spot. If you're starting to hit that million price tag, you're gonna expect you're gonna have to have a bit of a buffer.
So that's a great point. You touched on new versus old maintenance issues. So obviously a newer property covered by warranty, less maintenance issues. What do you see from your clients who buy an older property, let's say a 15, 20-year-old property?
Well, let's start with the tradespeople that they use, right? So if they're going to engage a tradesperson, especially someone that we haven't recommended that we don't use all the time, we can't guarantee their work. We've had a property in the past that's just been flipped, been fully renovated, and clients have gone and purchased it, and then they've engaged us to manage it. And the plumbing work was out, tiling was horrible, the kitchen sink and bench and everything needed to be redone.
Wow.
So it ended up costing them more money because they didn't do it right, or they didn't get the right tradesperson. They tried to do it on the cheap, and it can end up coming back to bite you. Yeah,
absolutely. I guess when you get to that 15 years, and I've experienced it myself in my own home, you get to 15 years, you need to repaint the thing kitchen appliances need replacing, laundry appliances need replacing, just things need replacing at around that time. So a lot of people get out of their investment after 15 years because they know that these costs are about to be incurred.
Yeah.
And you come along and you buy it,
Yeah.
you're like, oh, this is lovely.
Yeah.
And then, pool pump craps itself, plumbing goes, all these sort of things can happen when you're buying an existing property.
Yeah, and then they blame the property manager for it when we ring up. We're like,
As long as they're not calling me, mate, they're calling you.
We're like, mate, you got to fix these things. They're like, why is it all happening now? I'm
Yeah.
like, that's not me. I didn't go out there and do it.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah.
Right, Shaun, thanks very much for coming in and joining us. I hope you guys at home got a lot out of that. I sure did. For any of you guys out there, like I said before, Shaun has offered for anyone who's listening to this podcast a free consultation.
Correct.
Just to talk about your portfolio, if there's anything that he can help you with, even just an education piece for those guys who are thinking of investing, give Shaun a call and we'll show you the way. Thanks again, mate.
No worries. Thanks for having me.
Too easy.